After what felt like an exhausting, albeit festive, marathon of packing and unpacking, my wife Jen and I finally settled into our new suburban haven. Nestled in this quiet cul-de-sac, we were surrounded by houses that looked like they had just stepped off the pages of a Pinterest board. Freshly cut lawns glistened with dew under the crisp morning sun, and pastel-painted homes, adorned with holiday wreaths, stood shoulder to shoulder like cheerful neighbors at a coffee shop gossiping over the latest neighborhood news. I beamed with excitement thinking about our first holiday season in this blissful place. Christmas was my Super Bowl, a chance for me to shine as the decorator extraordinaire. "I'm thinking big this year," I told Jen, casually referencing the mountain of lights, inflatable reindeer, and cherished nativity scene that had been passed down through generations. "I mean just lights lining the roof, a couple of animated reindeer chilling in the yard, and the nativity scene, which will be the cherry on top." Jen rolled her eyes playfully. "Says the guy who almost set the last house on fire from overloading the circuits. Just don't go all Clark Griswold on me, okay?" Clark Griswold was a pioneer of Christmas spirit, I shot back, as I envisioned our house glowing like a beacon of holiday cheer. With the previous owners mentioning there was no official HOA, I thought we'd be gold. Just a carefree neighborhood committee focused on block parties and maintaining the community garden. What could possibly go wrong? Fast forward 3 weeks, after some light surgery on my fingers from tangles of lights that would make a lesser man cry, and our house was a holiday masterpiece. As I stood back to admire my handiwork on that chilly December evening, I felt a warmth inside that could only come from extreme satisfaction. The soft glow of the lights flickered merrily against the backdrop of the darkening sky. The animated reindeer bobbed in place like they were jamming to Christmas carols, and the nativity scene looked so idyllic it could star in its own holiday film. Just when I was soaking in the splendor of my accomplishment, I heard the shuffling of footsteps. I turned to see Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac and lead negotiator of absolutely everything, marching towards my house like she was about to deliver a TED talk on the dangers of excessive decorations. "Hello there, what an interesting display you've put up," she said, the words oozing from her mouth as she tried far too hard to sound pleasantly surprised. "Thanks," I replied, and I couldn't help my expanding grin. "That's quite a lot of lights," she continued, her eyes betraying her inner judgment. "It's Christmas, you know, cheer, joy, good vibes." I motioned to the splendor around us, trying to let the festive spirit shine through. Karen cleared her throat, adjusting her turtleneck like it was some sort of crown. "Let's not forget about tasteful decor, though. We wouldn't want to become, how do I say this, an eyesore." I blinked at her, processing the word eyesore. I was pretty sure I didn't just set up a clown convention. "Oh, I'm just keeping the holiday spirit alive. It's nothing too outrageous." "Right, but just remember, sometimes less really is more." She shot me a tight-lipped smile, and without waiting for my reply, turned on her heel, her sensible shoes tapping on the pavement like a metronome counting down to my potential doom. As she strutted away, her figure shrinking into the distance, I felt the first tendrils of unease coil around my holiday cheer. Did she really think I'd gone too far? What exactly was the threshold of tasteful around here? My Christmas spirit couldn't be dampened by a Karen, could it? In that moment, I realized I couldn't just let it go. Christmas decorating was a battle I now felt more than ready to fight. I still remember the crisp winter morning when I decided to transform my humble abode into a dazzling spectacle of Christmas cheer. You know, the kind that makes kids squeal with delight and adults bathe in nostalgia. I dragged out the 20-year-old box of decorations that had somehow become an absolute treasure trove of my holiday past. Plastic Santa Claus, more blinking lights than the Las Vegas Strip, and a giant inflatable snowman that probably considered itself the property line keeper. It was clip-clop, shiver-me-timbers fun, the perfect antidote to my dreary work-from-home routine. I was knee-deep in hanging snowflakes by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, sipping on a hot chocolate that had more marshmallows than liquid. If there's anything better than Christmas lights, it's marshmallow suffocation. For 3 glorious days, I'd basked in the bright glow of my hard work, while my neighbors either admired or silently judged my festive enthusiasm. I was convinced my decorations could bridge the gap between grouchy adults and sugar-rushed children, providing a communal joy everyone secretly craved. Then came the incident. 3 days post-decorating extravaganza, I heard a sharp, demanding knock that jerked me from my holiday reverie. Who on earth could need me this early after a cup of pure joy? I cracked the door open to find her, Sharon, the judgmental middle-aged woman from across the street with the delightful gift of misery plastered on her face. Good morning. I greeted, oozing holiday cheer like one of my sugar cookie disasters. She didn't reciprocate. Instead, she jabbed a printed sheet of paper squarely at my chest, as if it were a ticket to a Broadway show, and exclaimed, "You need to read this." I blinked down, taking in the words neighborhood guidelines, with a highlighted section screaming, "Subdued seasonal decorations only." Subdued. I could be bombarded by conjured images of dreary boughs of something or other that looked like they'd given up hope. With my heart rate slightly elevated from the sudden intrusion of this uninvited Grinch, I maintained a polite facade. "Well, actually, Sharon, there's no official HOA, so I think." Her expression morphed into a shade of red I never knew humans could achieve. "I'm the head of the neighborhood committee," she huffed, as if that alone granted her the right to declare a personal Christmas war. "Your blinking lights are disrupting my evening meditation." I raised an eyebrow. What type of meditation required the absence of twinkling lights? Did she chant in the dark? Was that even a thing? My internal monologue was in full swing, but I dived headfirst into charmingly explaining how my luminous delight kept many little hearts happy. Apparently, that didn't fly with her lofty ideals. "Lowering property values," she shouted, a moniker she seemed to relish as she jutted out her chin, nostrils flaring like a Victorian widow ready to faint. Oh, the horror of a Christmas display depreciating her perfect little pastel castle. She aimed one last glare before stomping off. "If you don't dismantle half of this by tomorrow evening, I will take it up with the proper authorities." I stood there, the holiday spirit gradually fading, replacing festivity with a deep-rooted determination. Did this woman really think she could extinguish my lights while simultaneously crowning herself queen of peaceful Christmas? The gauntlet had been thrown, and I, driven by a mix of benign defiance and holiday zeal, wasn't about to let it go. No, there are few things I love more than the holiday season. The air is crisp, the scent of gingerbread wafts through the neighborhood, and for a brief moment, everything feels a little more magical. Or at least it did, until Sharon moved in across the street and turned my festive light display into a full-blown neighborhood referendum on, I don't know, basic festive joy. It started innocuously enough, a light sprinkle of icicle lights here, a few twinkling snowflakes there. Okay, maybe I went a little overboard. Who hasn't spiced up their front lawn with enough lights to warrant an FAA warning? But what's Christmas without a bit of sparkle? Little did I know that my exuberant enthusiasm would paint a target on my house faster than you can say, "bah humbug." First, there were the passive-aggressive posts on our neighborhood Facebook group. It was the kind of stuff that made you cringe so bad you'd expect a sitcom laugh track to kick in. "What's with tacky displays in our neighborhood?" she wrote, cutting right to the heart like a knife through a pecan pie. It was accompanied by a photo of my glitter-bombed lawn taken at dusk, like some twisted hallmark gone wrong. In her comments, she threw in phrases like light pollution and respect for our community aesthetic. Oh right, because all of our pastel-painted houses are clearly auditioning for an art exhibit. Her posts mysteriously received only her own likes. I started brainstorming what kind of broomstick she was actually riding. Then the door-to-door campaign began. One sunny afternoon, as I was cheerily fluffing the fake snow on my front porch, I glanced up to see Sharon, the self-proclaimed president of aesthetic preservation, knocking on my neighbor Margie's door. It was like an intense HOA meeting had spilled out onto the street, clipboard in hand, and all hymnals were raised in protest against my eyesore of a display. I swear I saw Margie's confusion transform into horror as Sharon's passionate speech turned her expression from curious to please no. Eventually, I caught wind that Sharon had been doing reconnaissance on my Christmas display. I presume she was trying to gather evidence for some sort of holiday law enforcement. I blurted out a laugh to my husband. I'd like to see her try to take this to court. Your Honor, here you can observe Exhibit A, the glow of joy, also known as my living room. But in all seriousness, I started to feel a mix of amusement and horror. She was taking photos, documenting my transgressions like I was the neighborhood's version of a holiday fugitive. Life took a turn from aggravating to downright ludicrous when she parked her car directly across from my house one evening, headlights blinking like it was a scene out of a low-budget thriller. There she sat, the lights vigilante, armed with a cone of coffee, claiming she was monitoring the situation. Despite the chilly air, she had the audacity to blast classical music from her open windows, as if a symphonic crescendo of Beethoven could somehow drown out Jingle Bells, which, I might add, I cut off during a particularly soft section. How she thought that would halt my festive spirit was beyond me. In that moment, I realized this was no longer the battle for Christmas lights. It was a war of low-key titans, and I wasn't about to let old Sharon win. The gauntlet had been thrown, and this December was about to get lit in ways she could never have imagined. I stumbled out of my sedan, the kind of day-job exhaustion weighing heavily on my shoulders. The aroma of freshly cut grass wafted through the air, mingling with the faint scent of pot roast from the neighbor's house, the kind of idyllic suburban scene designed to lull you into a false sense of calm. But that peace was immediately shattered by the glaring blue and red lights reflecting off my pastel-painted porch. "Oh great, just what I needed," I mumbled, rolling my eyes. "What fresh hell is this?" I stepped out into the open, my mind still struggling to grasp the sight before me. A police car parked in my driveway like it owned the place. As I approached, I was greeted by the officer, a burly man with a mustache that screamed, "I live for donuts on a Thursday afternoon." "Good evening, ma'am. We got a call about your Christmas display." His nonchalant tone barely masked the snickers of children riding bicycles nearby, their eyes darting back and forth between the flashing lights and my not yet dismantled display. "Yeah, Christmas in September sounds ridiculous, but the Homeowners Association declared us early celebrators for competing to outshine the neighbors. Excessive noise, dangerous electrical hazards," I repeated, incredulously pointing to the twinkling lights strung around my yard like an enchanting winter wonderland. I had spent hours meticulously arranging them in perfect harmony, sticking to the safety guidelines with all the fervor of a kid trying to impress their teacher. The officer, after taking a good long look at my setup, raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, I see a lot of Christmas spirit here, but I don't see any hazards." He examined the wiring as if I'd made a bomb, nodding appreciatively. "This is actually pretty impressive." Of course, that's when I caught a glimpse of Sharon, my overly zealous neighbor, warily peeking through her blinds. Her hair was up in curlers, her cat Matilda perched on her shoulder like a furry overseer of neighborhood etiquette. I could practically feel her calculating all the ways to ruin my holiday cheer. As the officer wrapped up his visit, promising me a quiet night ahead, Sharon sprung into action, stalking out of her front door with the kind of intensity typically reserved for gladiators at the Colosseum. "This isn't over," she announced like a bad villain from a straight-to-DVD movie. "Excuse me," I replied, barely hiding my exasperation. "Your Vega-style light pollution will be shut down one way or another," she proclaimed, hands squarely on her hips and a fire in her eyes that could rival my light display. "I've already contacted the fire department, the city council, and even the local news about your dangerous display." I stood there, a cacophony of thoughts running through my mind like a mismanaged choir audition. How does one shut down a Christmas display? Should I start dismantling it immediately, or do I just wait for the SWAT team to show up? Or maybe I could just blast Jingle Bells on repeat until she surrenders. Something inside me snapped, a violent eruption of pure holiday spirit. "You know what? Keep calling whoever you want. You can't ruin Christmas for everyone, Sharon. Merry Christmas," I shouted back, waving my arms wildly, unsure if I was channeling my inner Christmas caroler or just attempting to scare her off like a Thanksgiving turkey. With that, I retreated into my house, and its comforting walls closed around me, sealing off the madness outside. But the sounds of the season and Sharon's threats echoed ominously as I sank onto my sofa, pondering just how far I'd go to keep my tinsel-covered freedom. Know that moment when you're just minding your own business, sipping on some sweet, creamy eggnog, and suddenly your peaceful evening is interrupted by a wave of indignation, so fierce it feels like a holiday miracle. Welcome to my life. Let me paint the picture for you. It was a crisp December evening, the kind where the air smells like pine, baked goods, and the bitter tang of neighborly drama. I just finished hanging a string of lights, the ones that twinkled more than they glimmered, on my front porch when Sharon, the self-proclaimed queen of our cul-de-sac, dropped the holiday bombshell on me. With her freshly manicured claws gripping a festive clipboard, she marched up to my door, her smirk as sharp as her stiletto heels. Apparently, my humble display was an affront to her carefully curated vision of subdued and tasteful holiday decor. I mean, who knew there were HOA rules governing holiday sparkle levels? Not me. What you have here, dear, looks like an eyesore, she'd said, her lips curling into that sugary smile that always made me want to throw a snowball at her. Not that I would, because I'm a classy gal, right? I discreetly flipped her off behind the door as she prattled on about the importance of maintaining our property values and how her delicate sensibilities were being assaulted by my extra-aggressive lights. Ha! I nearly laughed, but the fleeting thought of her clutching her pearls like a Regency damsel in distress struck me as so ridiculous that indignation simmered into something much sweeter, like a tempting idea glistening in the light of my patently inferior decorations. Revenge, I realized, would be mine. And not just any revenge, oh no. I would create a holiday light display that would cause Sharon to throw her diamond-encrusted pen down in defeat. By morning, I would have my plan in motion, and boy, was I masquerading under the spirit of Christmas. At the crack of dawn, I donned my favorite holiday sweatshirt, the one with dancing reindeer, and fired off a flurry of texts to my friends. All right, crew, I need you to put on your production hats. Sharon's trying to dim my holiday spirit, and it's time we crank the brightness up to Las Vegas. They responded with enthusiasm that rivals a Black Friday crowd at a doorbuster sale. Next, it was time for the door-to-door pitch. Armed with a police report, thanks to Sharon's habit of calling the fuzz on my innocent lighting scheme, and a vision to make the local children's hospital the true winners of our holiday battle, I walked up to each house, channeling the spirit of a very merry salesperson. I'm planning a street-wide light spectacular that will make your jaw drop. Trust me, it'll be glorious. And it's for a good cause. My neighbors quickly warmed to the idea. Was it the sparkle in my eye or the image of inflated candy canes dancing in their heads? Either way, by dusk, I had greenlit plans from 12 households, and the list was growing. Like Santa with his sleigh, I was ready to rumble. I left their doors with hugs, smiles, and promises of brightening their holiday spirits, and before I knew it, my plot was just as thrilling as a festive fireworks show. My pulse quickening with excitement, I envisioned a shimmering spectacle that would put Sharon's so-called tasteful charade to shame. Oh, it was going to be a holiday lights showdown for the ages, and I couldn't wait to flip that switch. All started when the first whisper of Christmas made its way through our cul-de-sac, subtly worming its way into my brain like the sugar plum fairy herself had taken residence in my head. It was late November, and while everyone else was still nursing their post-Thanksgiving food comas, I, in my infinite wisdom, or maybe just holiday-induced insanity, decided our normally drab street could benefit from a little pizzazz. After all, what's the point of living in the most monotonous suburb this side of the Mississippi if I can't take it upon myself to channel my inner Clark Griswold? I can't believe this neighborhood's already ripped all the inflatable turkeys down, I muttered to myself while surveying my lawn, which was still recovering from my half-hearted attempt at festive autumn decor. Then it hit me, not just a few lights or a tastefully decorated wreath. No, we needed the full-blown Wonderland experience. If my neighbors could go about their lives like characters in a boring Hallmark movie, I would make sure our street was the chaotic blockbuster finale that nobody knew they needed. Fast forward 5 days later, and the North Pole Strip, as the local news would later call it, was born. My event production buddies swung by and, wielding their professional-grade lasers and synchronized light sequences, turned my plans into a reality. I mean, why not go big or go home? As they worked, I luxuriated in the aroma of pine-scented candles wafting through the air. The kids giggled and ran around as inflatable Santas and snowmen began to populate our yards like sentient holiday decorations on crack. But of course, if you're going to throw a spectacle, safety is non-negotiable. Cue the overly professional electrician, the kind who enjoys regulatory codes more than holiday treats. "This is all up to code?" he asked, inspecting the dazzling display like it was a bomb shelter instead of a festive extravaganza. "Absolutely. Just think of it as a winter wonderland that won't lead to lawsuits," I shot back, half joking. He didn't seem amused, which only added to my determination. Nothing could ruin my holiday cheer, not even a few frowny-faced professionals. And of course, what's Christmas without charitable giving? I set up a donation box solely for the local children's hospital. Because if I was going to blind my neighbors with our fancy light display, I might as well shine some good vibes in the process. The piece de resistance, however, was the parking plan. I mean, nothing screams suburban fun like getting local police involved, right? When I explained the situation to Officer Rodriguez, he chuckled so hard I thought he might start tearing up. "Usually it's about keeping the peace, but this is something I can get behind," he said, shaking his head in disbelief at our audacious plans. Finally, the grand unveiling day arrived, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood outside with a grin that probably made me look deranged. I figured this was a much better look than letting Karen from across the street catch me in my sweats trying to figure out how to hang icicle lights. That Friday evening, Sharon came home from her book club, a book club, for heaven's sake, only to be greeted by the sight of hundreds of cars snaking through our cul-de-sac. I mean, if that wasn't a culmination of sheer suburban chaos, I don't know what was. "Is that hot chocolate?" she asked, squinting suspiciously at the food truck that had magically appeared, like Santa bringing cookies instead of lumps of coal. "Oh, don't just stand there. It's a winter wonderland. Get in line," I beamed, feeling like the proudest kid on Christmas morning. Little did I know that this joyous moment would be just the start of upheaval among my neighbors. Because what is the holiday season without a little bit of drama? The sun had barely dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden light over my street. It was a postcard-perfect evening, with neatly trimmed lawns radiating the scent of freshly cut grass. Thank you, Darren, my self-appointed neighborhood lawn care guru. I took a moment to bask in the glow of my holiday lights strung along every inch of my house. Twinkling like stars had decided to abandon the sky and take up residence on my front porch. I was feeling pretty proud of myself for orchestrating this whole event, a charity light display for the community. I could almost hear the gasps of awe from the neighbors. But of course, there was one neighbor who was bound to spoil the fun, the infamous Sharon. She was the self-proclaimed queen bee of our HOA, ruling with an iron fist adorned with oversized rings and a wide-brimmed sun hat that undoubtedly came with matching outrageously expensive gardening gloves. It was no surprise when I noticed her driveway empty, indicating she was likely on her way home from whatever secret meeting she had been conducting about urban aesthetics or curb appeal. Little did she know her neighbor was about to ruin her life. A few minutes later, I spotted her Honda Accord gliding up the street like a stealthy predator. As she pulled in, I could see her mouth drop open in disbelief, like a cartoon character witnessing a ghost. The joy on my face was priceless. I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, practically twinkling with delight as she parked, her suspiciously well-behaved poodle nonchalantly hanging out the window, oblivious to the impending drama. "Seriously, who do you think you are?" she exploded the moment she flung open her car door. The air practically crackled with her outrage. I mean, who wouldn't want 1,000 twinkling lights announcing the holiday season? "Sharon," I exclaimed in my best innocent voice, "welcome to our holiday wonderland. I know it's a bit much, but think of the children." "The children," she scoffed, rolling her eyes so dramatically I half expected them to pop out. "I'll have you know this is a violation of neighborhood safety. I should be calling the police right now." As if on cue, just as Sharon was warming up to her rant, our local police chief, a jolly man with a penchant for holiday sweaters, strolled by with his grandkids in tow. He approached her with a warm smile, a clear contrast to her furious glare. "Ah, Sharon, good to see you," he said cheerfully. I already spoke with the organizers about this event. Everything's up to code, properly permitted for a charity event, and approved by the city council. Her attempt to gather ammunition against me fizzled like a cheap firework in the rain. The chief's cheerful demeanor made her flinch, as if his smile was the ultimate kryptonite to her HOA fury. But, she stammered, losing steam as she looked around, only to spot a whole group of neighbors mingling, baking cookies, and handing out hot chocolate. They were the secret squad that I had roped into planning this grand display. "Oh, Sharon, you're here. Isn't this just lovely?" piped in Karen from 3 doors down, her arms laden with holiday treats. Sharon's world crumbled beneath her as she realized her army was, in fact, mine. And as if that wasn't enough, her final desperate move, 2 days later, was to slap together some flimsy flyers about neighborhood safety to distribute amongst the visitors flocking to see the lights. "Please, let's not forget about safety," she said, flushed with defiance, clutching a handful of neon papers as she was met by our hired security team. I chuckled from the sidelines, her futile attempts resembling a modern-day Quixote tilting at windmills, while our event attendees were sublimely oblivious. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to escort you back to your property," the security guard said politely, maintaining a straight face as he guided her away, her heels clicking indignantly on the pavement. The evening moved on, filled with laughter and joy, absolutely perfect. And as I glanced at Sharon, who was now attempting to detach herself from their grasp, I thought to myself, this is the holiday spirit, redefined. All started innocently enough, like the first snowflake drifting down on a December morning. My neighbor Sharon had always been the type to keep her yard unremarkable, an endless sea of beige siding and an assortment of wilted flowers meant to scream, "I'm trying," from a distance of about a mile. I, on the other hand, embraced the holiday spirit with gusto. Every year, I would deck out my house like it was auditioning for a Christmas special, twinkling lights, inflatable Santas, and more candy canes than should legally exist on a single block. One fateful December evening, while I was hanging lights on my roof, 105% safety standards in mind, obviously, Sharon mustered the courage to knock on my front door, her face a mix of determination and sheer disapproval. I still remember how the chilly air seemed to hush around us as she bravely made her pitch. "Hi, I'm Sharon. I wanted to discuss your holiday decorations," she said, clasping her hands as if preparing for battle. "Oh, absolutely," I smiled, my holiday cheer unwavering. "Isn't it exciting to spread some joy?" "Joy," she huffed, crossing her arms like some kind of Christmas sentinel, moory like a barrage of blinding lights. "The glare from your house is stopping my cats from finding the litter box. They're traumatized." I feigned surprise, and only a small part of me wanted to burst out laughing. "I'm really sorry to hear that, Sharon. But can you honestly tell me that 22 strands of twinkle lights and a giant inflatable snowman are really keeping you up at night?" "Offensive," she declared, unfurling her arms as if she just recited the Constitution. "This is a moderate suburb, not Vegas. We don't need your extravaganza ruining our peace." Oh, that was it. Moderate suburb, I thought, releasing a deep theatrical sigh. "Oh, darling, if it's peace you want, you should move to a monastery. Decorating this neighborhood is an art, and I'm Picasso in a Santa hat." But I maintained a respectful tone. "Thanks for sharing your feedback, Sharon." I ended with a smile that could only be interpreted as veiled sarcasm. Little did I know that this encounter would kick off the most outrageous holiday saga in our neighborhood's history. Instead of letting her complaints dampen my spirit, I channeled that indignation into my Christmas display that year. I decorated as if the fate of the North Pole depended on it, putting up more lights, raising the stakes, and creating a spectacle that would make even the Grinch chuckle. As soon as the lights went up, people started flocking to our block like moths to a, very bright and festive flame. The local news got wind of it, likely after hearing about Sharon's brave but doomed crusade against the Christmas cheer. Our display was not only featured on 3 different news stations, but also in the city newspaper. Yes, that was me. Local hero creates Christmas wonderland. It went viral. Well, as viral as holiday lights can get. The best part, however, the ultimate victory came from the money raised, over $15,000 collected for the children's hospital. Sharon's face must have been the shade of her dreary curtains when she heard about it. After all, who would have thought a neighborly complaint about twinkling lights would turn into a shining beacon of holiday spirit, raising funds faster than you can say, FALALALALA. It wasn't long before Sharon gave up her uphill battle against the festive deluge. Her involvement traded for a stay with her sister, leaving town without even a goodbye. And little did I know, her house, the once grim sentinel overlooking our twinkling display, would soon take on an entirely different life of its own.